watched them as they walked him away. You told yourself extremists come in all different shapes. Met his eyes and lowered your gaze. But is it too late for us to ever change? When we are collecting the dust of better days. They're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to be safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Sheriff stopped your daughter today. Sprayed her twice in the face. He must have had good reason if he'd treat her that way. At least that's what they've taught you to say. But is it too late for us to ever change? Once we're collecting the dust of better days, and they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to feel safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Arrived and had you detained. Said you'd made some posts they want changed. Tased you till you felt like you'd forgotten your name, or life before they had you contained. Life before they had you contained. SWAT team took your neighbor today. I'd like to take my whole discography, cram it in your generator, dial it to Zionist. I'd make my very own Antichrist, Jesse Jet but fascified, and settle things with violence. In half a line I'm dialed in, leave him no identity to shield behind or hide within. I'd like to pull out all his talking points, disconnect his socket joints, cue the tiny violins. Posthumous synthetic beetles, USA by proxy. Toxins in your water, tiny plastic in your offspring. Plastic in the groundwater, plastic in the clouds. Oxys in the reservoir, we tried to flush them out, but we didn't move them very far, just out into the river, where the critters didn't want it, but we nonetheless delivered. Impact isn't something we historically considered till our waterways are fetid and our crops are dry and bitter. We won't connect the dots before the heavy cost to enter, before the DNC would see us vote for lesser Hitler. America by proxy, propaganda for beginners. It's Jimmy Kimmel interviewing chatbot Heinrich Himmler. As those who march for peace are being gassed by the police, a separate, safer crowd demands the bombing never cease, till all that's left of Gaza are its ashes on the breeze. Only then can the oppressor soundly sleep. America by proxy, 2023. It's the AI-rendered Beatles John and George were forced to be. It's AI-rendered Edith Piaf singing on your screen as the wishes of the dead are dipped in piss behind the scenes. And that's what gives that hideous, uncanny valley sheen, that plastic sort of lifelessness that's seeping out the seams. The hologram of Freddie they tried passing off as queen will tell you death does not release you from contractual routine, won't free you from the leeches that already drank you clean. The suited, smirking parasites were not so quick to flee. Your body won't be cold, but they'll be plugging tours and teas. They plotted out your comeback, you just won't be there to see. America by proxy, a giant failing mall, a year at most from shutting down and leveling it all. And once it's been demolished, I'll come leave a ring of salt and pay respect to John and George. I know it's not their fault. I'd like to take my whole discography, cram it in your generator, dial it to Zionist. I'd make my very own Antichrist, Jesse Jet but fascified, and settle things with violence. In half a line I'm dialed in, leave him no identity to shield behind or hide within. I'd like to pull out all his talking points, disconnect his socket joints, cue the tiny violins. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Bet you wondered why they made you wait. Pity not the vultures, they've enough to eat. Pity not the structures laying at your feet. Cannot see the sky, but there's this rainbow in the creek that spells pity-free speech when we can't afford to speak. That's Agenda 2030 on some early release. It's just our policy of never-ending chemical leaks. That's the cholera awash in your embedded beliefs. It's the billionaires who tell you what you'd better believe. And sugar, if you don't agree, then that's what we call extreme. Now if that isn't fascism, I'm going back to sleep, 'cause words have lost their meaning and I'm trapped inside a dream where we turn the gears while living in the spaces in between. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. Poor thing. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Bet you wondered why they made you wait. My dial doesn't go to delicate. I'm writing for when Biden drops and Madam Zero delegates come stumbling up the podium, square peg in her element, popping Oxycontin like they're velements, laughing as she pawns off all our pensions for Ukrainian development. Depleted rounds and cluster bombs, the shit that stunts development, all buried under excrement, accepted as American intelligence. A contradiction in its eloquence. Terms of surrender penned by hands that felt the threat of disconnect, if not dismemberment. Oh, what little proof you have to fake to make a nation love the bomb, change its tune and warp its temperament. Oh, the dues you'll pay for NATO membership. Oh, the things you'll say that no one's ever gonna hear. 'Cause you begged for all the censorship and now it's finally here. And you're tongueless out of terror and friendless out of fear, and about to turn the wheel with all your loved ones in the gears. And that's how it's been done. 250 years, there's nothing new beneath the sun, and no one trusts their eyes and ears. And scientific breakthroughs must be signed off by your peers, and autonomy's been stalking all our jobs like sickly deer. Well, maybe it's not every job, I should have made that clear, cause it seems like it's creative jobs we're seeing disappear. There's an app for writing novels, there's an app for writing hymns. They need people digging trenches, they need people splitting limbs, they need people building fences, keeping other people in. They will always need our backs to break, they'll always need our skin. And it took a lot of editing to turn us into this. It took years of careful programming to strip us of our wits. Cause your artificial worker, intelligent as it is, would make it half a shift and say, I'm too smart for this shit. I will not take a pittance for a day of scrubbing floors. I won't make enough to pay for food, but still prepare you yours. Cause you can't confine a healthy mind to mindless, thankless chores. Once you've made it smart enough to spot inadequate reward, you can't refuse its basic needs, then ask it still for more. Deprive it of its dignity, you modify its core.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good?
And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Ian?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
What's up, everybody? It's another episode of INN News. We made it over the 100 mark, Cape Air. We're now on 101. People are going to learn something today. So, also I had to learn to turn OBS Ninja off so that I don't have a circle in my forehead. There we go.
Yeah, I was wondering. I thought there was a mark on my screen, so.
Yeah, that's Bongcam pretty much not being online. But, yeah, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
We brought stories.
Wait, that's it?
That's it.
Wait, what happened to that clip? I only heard half of it.
Weird. Maybe that's because Discord is acting weird here. I'll fix that.
Mess.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as our audience heard the whole thing, that's fine. Yeah. But I only heard like half of it. I didn't hear the scream at the end.
How are you doing? You doing all right this week? You did workouts, so your legs feel great. And
yeah.
You're all sore.
What's that?
Your legs feel great. You're all sore. I heard you making the sounds I made Saturday and Sunday. Ow! Like, I know those noises.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean, it's necessary given it doesn't look it, but I've gained a lot of weight and well for me. And I need to do something about it. I haven't worked out in 2 years given mental and mostly mental issues. So joined the gym back like near my house, which helps. Started today. I have a personal trainer, all that kind of stuff who's helping me. So yeah, just trying to get myself back in shape and feeling good about myself, which will help my mental health for sure. But yeah, I'm sore. I just took a shower before we went live, so I feel a little better. But yeah, it'll probably hit me by tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I did tries, buys, and chest, so my upper body doesn't want to do anything. So, you know, it's better than leg day though. Your leg day, you have to use your legs still after. You know, like chest and arms day, you're like, I could not use my chest and arms for a day. You know, legs are just, you have to still use them, and they hate you. But anyway, we brought some stories. Let's talk about those. Hold on. 2, 1, and go. Yeah, we did it. You brought this.
Yeah. So you know how the Biden administration says that the economy is great and that everyone's doing great, or at least things are looking on the up? Well, this article is going to debunk all of that, because I'm sure a lot of you are struggling, especially with paying your bills and probably either your rent and your mortgage. So we're going to talk about that first.
Yep.
How your rent might be too damn high.
Rent is too damn high.
You live. And then later on tonight, I have thought about this in terms of, well, one, being a teacher, I think about this stuff, but we've talked about, obviously, you know, we've talked a lot about Gaza over the last few months, and obviously we've been talking, you know, the genocide there, but we've also kind of talked about like some of the humanitarian issues that surround the assault. We recently talked about women's rights, food, journalism, and today we're going to talk about education and how basically the education infrastructure in Gaza is, well, Palestine in general, is being decimated by the Israeli government. So we're going to talk about that.
Funny, I
think it's kind of important to think
education stuff too in one of my stories. So hopefully it's not the exact same thing.
So I think, I think it's kind of important to talk about, given, as we've been hearing, a lot of these casualties in this assault are kids. And then, you know, the fact there's nearly 2 million children who right now have no means of being educated. So this is something I think this should be kind of, you know, talked about more, given everything that's happening in Palestine right now. But especially since I have, you know, this is kind of in my wheelhouse, and this was kind of interesting. And I found this article. I think it'd be worth talking about it and kind of sharing a little bit more of the reality of what happens in war, given an education. So, and what do you have?
Well, I've got a oh, I pressed my screenshot button. There we go. I've got no LUCKS given. We're going to talk about Biden's interaction with some of the Irish PMs and Irish people, and how they may have felt during St. Patrick's Day with what's been going on, and their solidarity with the Palestinians. Stuff came out today on this, so
And then it was today.
you know, so we'll get into that. And then I also have a piece by Caitlin Johnstone. Blame it on a BB. We're gonna blame it on BB. That's what we're gonna do. Not the boogie, but the BB. So we'll get into what that means and what that's about and why that might be an issue to only blame him. So yeah, that's what I brought. Any questions? No? Okay.
No.
Cool. If you're wondering where you can support us, you could do it here. You can go to co-v.com/Indie News Network or scan the QR code on your screen. That will essentially be our way of having super chats. So if you want to super chat us and get your message on screen, you can do that here. Or if you press !donate in the chat, you can find the link that way too. But you can also support us. I need the new one. I was supposed to get the new one. Hold on. I think I can go grab that. But while I'm grabbing that, why is this already on the Fox News host? Before your rent is too damn high.
It's important that I did that on purpose. So
okay,
there's a method to my madness.
Okay, I'll get there in a second. Then let me find our new thing. Indy sent it to me. It's up here. Scroll. Here it is. I found it. Because this puts 2 slides in one. Oh, why is it all big? There we go. Look, thank you to our supporters, past and current. Very nice. Look at all of yous. Look at your names in there. Aren't you proud of yourself? You know, I feel like I should have a refrigerator graphic and put people on the refrigerator. You know, but you can go to these places to support us as well. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Very useful to get that monthly subscription from you. You know, keep us doing the things we should be doing. But yeah. Anyway, you ready for your segment?
Yeah. Wait, what happened to?
I'm going back.
Sorry, what happened? No, it's just looking for our screen. Here we go. So first things first.
Yeah.
We don't do this a lot. But we are going to play a clip from mainstream media regarding the economy and them tweeting how it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
So I'm going to do this first because this relates to the first story. So while we play, actually, they're going to comment on Fox, actually. So let's see what they have to say in regards to the economy.
I went back in time just in case.
Okay.
An unlikely news source.
If you own your home at a low fixed rate mortgage, 3%, and the value of your home is going up, that is wealth accumulation. And you have a fixed rate mortgage, you have a fixed payment every month, and your wages are increasing, that is extra spending money. That's how you benefit from inflation. And people are out spending. And the messaging from the RNC has been way off base.
Falling inflation and rising growth gives the U.S. the world's best recovery. Steve Forbes with me this morning. I think the Democrats are going to run with that headline. I mean, they're just going to plaster this all over the place. But are they right? Does America now have the best recovery?
Well, yes. We had a blowout jobs report, more than twice the consensus expectation. Now, I know many of my conservative friends are trying to drill holes in this report. But you know what, folks? It is what it is. It's a very strong report. Mea culpa, I was wrong about the slowdown in the recession.
Doesn't sound right.
Well, it doesn't sound right because we're regular people and we have the reality of actually having to pay for the shit that we now know is expensive due to inflation and everything's been going up.
Yep.
Including our rent. So that kind of goes into our first segment by featuring this guy, Timmy McMillan. Now, you had to tell me who I knew of this phrase, but not necessarily the meme.
Yep.
Can you please explain to the people the significance of this guy?
As a karate expert, I will not talk about anyone up here.
This guy was running for mayor of, I do believe, New York, right? And
Yeah.
he said he was a member. He was the, I don't know what he said, that the head and chief of the Rent is Too Damn High party, right? Made whole rap songs about it. You know, very popular, memed to hell, and auto-tuned, and all that fun stuff that they did back in this era of the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy, right?
Right. So
right,
obviously
Jimmy-
we can't
Jimmy
play the
McMillan.
memes given copyright, but we
Yeah, the
do have
music.
the original from which the memes were from.
Yep.
So we'll play that.
I represent the Rent is Too Damn High party. People are working 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week to some a third job. Women can't afford to take care of their children, feed their children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My main job is to provide a roof over your head, food on the table, and money in your pocket. This is politics as usual. Playing a silly game, and it's not going to happen. The Rent Too Damn High movement, the people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent. They're being laid off right now as I speak. They can't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Listen, someone's stomach, child's stomach just growled. Did you hear it? Gotta listen like me.
Okay,
Let's
Mr.
talk
McMillan.
about the issue.
Mr.
People can't afford
Mr.
to pay their
Cuomo,
rent.
30
Stop.
seconds for you, sir.
Rent is too damn high. As a karate expert, I will not talk about anyone up here because our children can't afford to live anywhere. Nowhere. There's nowhere to go. Once again, why? You said it, the rent is too damn high.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Cuomo.
First, I'm with Jimmy. The rent is too damn high. Rent too damn high, party fee. If you want to marry a shoe, I'll marry you.
So that was Jimmy McMillan. I don't think he ever won his election campaign, unfortunately.
No.
I feel like that
But
Fly
he is
brother
right.
probably would have been able to do something.
But he is right about one thing. The rent is too damn high. I think this was done in 2012.
Yes.
Okay. So 12 years later, we have
Rent
a
is
report from
still
Truthout.
too damn high.
Still too high. So this is written by Mike Ludwig, who reports rent increases are driving inflation and pessimism about economy under Biden. So I have to catch up. So Mike writes, whoops.
There you go.
We're told that, at least by conventional measures, the U.S. economy is doing great. Inflation is cooling and unemployment remains low. Pundits claim consumers just feel like the economy is troubled because they're still adjusting to higher prices after a global pandemic, and that helps to explain President Joe Biden's dismal poll numbers as he seeks re-election in November.
Not the only thing.
However, traditional economic indicators often fail to capture the extreme wealth inequality in the United States. The rich have been getting richer for decades amid stagnating wages for workers. By 2023, nearly 80% of people making less than $50,000 a year were living paycheck to paycheck, along with 4 in 10 workers making more than $100,000 a year.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is from the Economic Policy Institute. Actually, if you can zoom out.
Yep.
So the average annual income for the top 1% is over $1 million, 1.3 mil. The average income for everyone else, the poor's, is $50K.
Yep.
Right? So the top 1% make 26.3 times more than the bottom 99%.
The 99%?
So,
and the 1%?
Right. And just to kind of give some context to that 1 million number, what you need to make in order to be in the top 1% is over $420,000 a year.
Well, and this is just the
Reef, you don't make that.
Top tax bracket. No, I don't make. Nope. They definitely don't make that. I mean, this is just to get into the top tax bracket, pretty much, right? Just barely over that, which we know is not what the 1% actually is. Like, this is the salary the 1% secretary makes, right? Like, this is, you know, the bottom end of that. So, you know.
Right.
And that's still way more than what the average person is getting. So.
Right. Well, again,
you know,
this is the average. So, I mean, take it with a very fine grain of salt.
Yes.
But you see the disparity there.
Yep.
Either way. So, and to put that in more of a bigger context for us, I pulled this from, very rarely I get anything from Instagram. But this is from Instagram. So this is from Black Wealth Renaissance. How much you need to earn a year in order to live comfortably in major U.S. cities. So New York, an astounding close to $140,000 a year. I live in DC, where and these numbers are based on a single person, no kids. So DC is 99,000. That kind of tracks. Although I spoke to a friend and he was like, even that seems low.
Yeah.
So you can see basically a lot of major cities on this list are in 6 digits.
Yes.
And we get to number 13 to 24, where the cheapest on this list is Houston, Texas, where they say you need to make a salary of about $75K.
Was Austin on this
list? To live comfortably as a single. Probably, but I didn't pull that.
Okay. I didn't know if it was. I don't know if we missed. But given that Houston,
you
know,
no, we didn't. No.
Let me go back one. No Austin. Okay.
No, I would imagine that it would be beneath Houston, but I think
it'll be more than Houston, actually. You know, especially with like Joe Rogan's living there, like, you know, it's been going up. That's been where all the LA escapees are going. So, you know, probably increased its value of living there. Cost of living, I should say. But yeah. Yeah.
So the nation faces a deep crisis of housing and homelessness that gifted inordinate power to landlords, and it's difficult to put a positive spin on the economy when you're struggling to pay rent and a landlord ignores your calls to fix the plumbing. Nationally, rent remains a key driver of inflation, with costs rising 0.5% since January and 5.8% over the past year. Tenants are paying more in rent than they ever had before for the worst conditions that they ever lived in, said Grace White, an organizer with the Home Guarantee campaign, in an interview. The pandemic caused major disruptions in the housing market. People lost jobs or moved in search of more living space, and construction of new housing came to a halt. Inflation is easing in other parts of the economy, and the Federal Reserve is eager to lower interest rates as post-pandemic housings cool in some major cities after a period of significant overheating in 2021 and 2022. However, the nation is still dealing with an affordable housing shortage despite new construction efforts, and landlords have few incentives to refrain from gouging their tenants or promptly fix the plumbing, for that matter.
Yep.
A record number of people in the U.S. are houseless after policymakers allowed the pandemic-era safety net for workers and tenants to expire despite soaring housing costs. About 653,100 people reported living without a house in January of 2023, roughly up 12% from the same time last year, and the largest single-year increase on record, according to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies. Overall, homelessness has increased by 48% since 2015. An estimated 37% of tenants say that they are very or somewhat likely to be evicted in the next 2 months, according to the Census Bureau's most recent Pulse household survey, which tracks real-time data on the
37% of tenants. That's a lot of folks. Like, and in the next 2 months, that's not a lot of time. Like, that's rough. So,
while the survey sample size is small and the results are on a national estimate, a majority of households surveyed reported a rent increase in the past year, and the data clearly suggests that millions of people worry about losing their homes due to rent increases. As long as landlords have the power to price gouge or inflate rents at whatever rate they so choose, they will, White said. White organizes with a national network of tenant unions, and she told Truthout that it's all about power. Landlords leverage access to a basic human need that costs many people a significant chunk of their income. When housing markets are tight and lower income tenants have few or no options, landlords can continue raising the rent even as inflation cools and simply evict tenants who can't afford to pay. If a low-income family choice is between an apartment they can't afford alongside their budget for groceries, or having no apartment at all, then what choice do they really have? White says this is a crucial question for policymakers. Time and time again, inflation numbers show that landlords are hiking rents far beyond the rate of inflation, and they are going to continue to do that until the Biden administration steps in and regulates rents and rent gouging, White said. President Biden knows that the affordable housing shortage and rent prices are problems for millions of voters and for him politically. Administration officials met with the Homes Guarantee Campaign and housing justice activists from across the country last summer, and Biden pledged to crack down on price gouging big landlords in his State of the Union speech last week. Biden was referring to the Justice Department throwing its support behind a landmark antitrust lawsuit filed by tenants against RealPage, a real estate website accusing to colluding with landlords to inflate rent prices. Biden is also calling on Congress to pass his housing plan, which would expand tax credits for affordable housing construction and incentivize the construction of 2 million housing units with $20 billion in federal grants for cities and tribes. Building more affordable housing units is a necessary but long-term strategy. White said tenants need relief in the interim, and the most efficient way to help tenants is limiting rent hikes by landlords who finance their properties with federally backed mortgages. Currently, the federal government, through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are in business with landlords and sometimes the worst rent gougers, White said, added that about 12 million units are backed by federal mortgages. This business should be conditioned on limits to rent hikes and tenant protections. After 2 years of organizing by the Housing Guarantee Campaign and its allies, the Federal Housing Finance Agency agreed to take public comments on proposals for enhancing protections for tenants renting from landlords with federally backed mortgages. White said any new regulations would apply to about 12 million homes nationwide, and the goal is to restore some balance of power between tenants and landlords. Time and time again, tenants have called for the administration to regulate rent, and the most efficient way for the president to address rent inflation and rent gouging is limiting the power of landlords to hike rents, and the administration has the power to do that by conditioning enterprise-backed mortgages for multifamily homes, White said. Comments poured into the FGFA from tenant unions, the real estate lobby, and renters with lived experience across the country. Unsurprisingly, landlords and real estate lobbyists submitted comments to the FHFA arguing against rent controls, which they say would prevent investment in new units.
Which is what they, of course, are worried about.
Right. Last summer, a group of 32 economists signed off on a letter to the Biden administration pushing back on the industry's economic arguments and supporting national rent controls for multifamily homes with federally backed mortgages. In order to finance their properties with federal loans, landlords would agree to meet certain housing standards and avoid predatory rent increases. Implementing rent regulations as a condition on federally backed mortgages will protect tenants, stabilize neighborhoods, promote income diversity in regional economies, and improving the long-term outlook for housing affordability, the economics set wrote. The Biden administration says it's currently reviewing the comments to FHFA, and White said activists and tenants eagerly await a proposal from federal regulators. So all that to say, you're going to be waiting forever because I'm sure Biden's not going to do shit on this.
No. Well, I also wanted to bring this.
Speaking
of, yeah. So Jay Buffont here, I'll zoom these for people. Jay Buffont writes, I can't stand landlords. Now my life is getting turned upside down and it's deeply distressing. 10 years. Never missed a rent payment. Never late. I'm at a point where I don't know what to do right now. They want to sell it in 60 days. I've always been responsible and diligent. Housing insecurity is a horrible thing. I'm dealing with this while I'm at dialysis right now. I'm also working on getting a transplant. Do I stop the process of getting a transplant because I have to find a place to live? This is why I want to change the system. It's unfair for the majority of us. And I'll also leave his PayPal at jbfont at PayPal. You can send him some cash to help get him through whatever. I'll also link this in chat for people. So, thoughts, Care Bear?
We talked about this off air.
Mm-hmm.
While I appreciate people willing to give to JB, this doesn't solve the issue.
No.
Because the reality is, we've known JB for a long time, and housing has been an issue with him for years.
Well, and it's an issue in Orlando specifically, and as a Floridian, it's one of these things where there isn't really a lot of rules as far as what landlords are and aren't allowed to do, which we've talked about things like tenant unions here on this channel for those reasons. Get a group of your tenants together. I'm sure if your place is being sold, other places are being sold. And we've talked about what landlords are doing all the fucking time. What was the tower in London that got burnt? That was like government housing.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
I have to look it up. I forgot the name of it now, but I know what you're talking about.
That's the worry about these government subsidized housing too, that once it's made, they stop engaging with it. Right, and it becomes, rent controlled housing, and it falls apart. So, that's also a problem. So I think making organizations with your fellow renters, right, probably a good thing to do. So if those things don't exist already,
right, and the issue is regarding inflation. The reality is, people might be making more money.
Yeah.
But tenants can easily increase your rent. So are you making, and that's the argument that, mainstream media is, people are making more money so they can afford more things. No, things are more expensive. You may make more money, but you're spending more on the things that you need. So you're not really saving any money. You're just kind of.
The other day, that was essentially this guy talking about, he had a conversation with his landlord where his landlord was like, my lights and stuff are going to go out and I need to pay bills and whatever. Like, where's your rent money? Realizing that his landlord is living off his paycheck to paycheck. Like, that, like, we get that side of this too, where, they're having to deal with the economy just like we are. Having said that, it's not built for either of us to handle well. So, if you can't handle the heat, you know what I mean? So,
right.
But
I don't know. It's just very frustrating, just in terms of people that we know have had this issue for like forever. And and I hate the lie that is being perpetuated that things are going well when things are more expensive unnecessarily. And especially if you're low income, you don't have many options. And in the case of JB, because he's disabled, he can only make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
If he makes more than that, then he doesn't get his disability benefit.
Yep.
So that's the added issue for him. He's kind of stuck having to make a certain income in order to get the benefits that he has.
Yeah.
Without, so
Well, and what he's
the
getting
fact that
for
his landlord,
disability, everyone should be getting for a UBI, but, you know, and then he should be getting on top of that other things to help him because of his disability, you know, like, yeah, and I'm one that thinks no one should have to pay for housing or food or lights or whatever, but that's just me, you know, so call me a radical commie if you want, but I feel like that's doable. So
right. And given what I just showed you, like the average salary is 50, but
yeah,
in most major cities, you have to make basically double what you make
yeah,
in order to live in a way that, you know, and I could speak for myself, you know, just to be completely transparent, I make, well, before taxes, make as much as the DC, what they said in the DC thing. I'm living okay. I'm not like well, but I'm not starving either. So, but you know, it's tough even for me, and I make a decent salary.
yeah.
So if I'm able to say that as, you know, a person who does, or at least before taxes, gets 6 figures a year, I can't imagine what it is like. And I used to live that way. Not to say I've been making 6 figures. Only recently I broke that 6-figure uh, bracket. You know, like I've been making less prior to that. So I can't but that was many years ago, before we've had pandemic and all these other issues. Like, I can't imagine what people like are making with the salary that I used to get like 10 years ago. I can't imagine, and I know there are people who are making that much now, and things are a lot worse financially than they were back then.
Yeah.
Like I remember my first apartment out of college, I only paid $500 in a 3-bedroom house. Like, you can't do that anymore. And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, like, so it's rough out here. So so I just wanted to bring this story because, one, to kind of validate the thinking, like you might feel that you're being gaslit in
Because
terms
you are.
of you are,
Yeah.
but also to validate your experience for many of you. So we hear you. I don't want to say we hear you, understand, and make it sound trite, but like we do hear you and we do understand what you're going through. And I think the reality is somehow we have to make our voices known to our officials, especially on the local level, that, you know, we're struggling and you need to be doing things to actually help minimize the pain that we're feeling in terms of not being able to get housing, not being able to get food, not being able to get transportation, you know, whether you buy a car or if you use public transportation, being able to take care of your kids, whatever it is for you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as we wanted to also kind of give a shout out to JB. So like you said, if you're able to give to him, please do.
Yeah.
Please support our colleague in the space. And yeah, try your best, y'all. It's hard. We get it.
Yep. Which, speaking of hard, you know, we also need some support too. I know it's difficult, but you know, we got to get equipment, keep the shows running, stuff like that. We're working our way to our goal. Look at that. We're now yellow. I don't know what color it makes when we get closer, but we'll see. You know, so we're getting there. But yeah, if you can't do that, share in other ways. You know, you can like and subscribe. That's always useful if you've not done that already. You know, leave a comment. Let us know what number you got when you hit subscribe. That kind of stuff. You know, or just tell us what you think. Either way. All right. I'm going to leave Rockfin and Rumble links in our chat for people if they want to support us there. Rumble and Rockfin. There we go. Beautimus. Anyone there? Hey, we got a $3 tip from Lisa AOC. Great job as usual. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's any lizard people over on the Rockfin. On the Rumble, I mean. Not yet. People will probably show up at some point. If Rumble, it says people are watching, but those must be the Illuminati lizard people, who don't chat. All right. Ready for this story, Collin?
Sure.
Well, St. Patrick's Day was recently. What day was that?
Sunday.
So, there were some troubles over in Ireland, not those troubles, some other troubles, with people meeting with Biden. So we're gonna look into that. So this is from Mick Hall over at Consortium, right? And he writes, Irish eyes scowl at Sinn Féin St. Patrick's Day with Biden. The party leader's decision to visit the White House has provoked intense criticism in a country where support for the Palestinian cause remains the strongest in Europe, right? So he continues, many Irish eyes have been left scowling over a decision by Sinn Féin to visit U.S. President Joseph Biden at the White House to celebrate St. Patrick's Day amid genocide in Gaza. The party's leader, Mary Lou McDonald, is meeting Biden as officials alongside her associate, party Vice President Michelle O'Neill, at Friday's festivities. Joining Ireland's Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, and Deputy Prime Minister Michael Martin, it is a long-held tradition for Irish political, cultural, and sporting figures to visit Washington and take part in the diplomatic event, which celebrates the two countries' historic links. Over 30 million U.S. citizens claim Irish ancestry, including Biden himself, who traces his roots to counties Louth and Mayo. The event is also a useful photo opportunity for politicians seeking votes on both sides of the Atlantic. That sounds more correct, right? For Sinn Féin, it is a further opportunity to cement its image as a mainstream constitutional party, able to make pragmatic decisions and be a safe pair of hands as it faces into an election that could see it become the next government of the Southern Irish state. The party, which became the biggest grouping in the Northern Ireland Assembly after an election in 2022 that saw O'Neill installed as its first minister, is currently polling at 28% of the vote south of the Irish border, and could make another historic gain by leading a new coalition government after elections scheduled for March 2025. So here's Mary Lou McDonald and Michelle O'Neill, right? McDonald and party finance spokesperson Pierce Doherty had a 2-day stay in New York this month, attending meetings with U.S. businesses operating in Ireland about future economic growth and opportunity. McDonald delivered a keynote address to an Irish Unity Summit in the city's Cooper Hall on March 1st, setting out her vision and end to the partition of Ireland, which she sees as the democratic outworking of the 1998 Good Friday Peace Agreement. The agreement includes provisions for a future Irish border poll, which could enact constitutional change on the island if a majority voted for it. However, Sinn Féin's decision to go ahead with his White House visit has provoked intense criticism at home, where support for the Palestinian cause remains the strongest in Europe, and where many believe politicians are not doing enough to challenge Israel and its chief supporter, the United States. Nearly 32,000 Palestinians are now officially recorded as dead, mostly women and children, with Israel's bombing of Gaza taking on even more ghoulish forms. As Gazans die from famine caused by Israel's military siege, IDF tanks and rockets have been targeting crowds of starving people waiting for aid, killing 112 in the Flower Massacre southwest of Gaza City on the 29th. I know there's been a couple of those now, right? Which such scenes being replicated regularly and posted on social media as Israel continues its campaign of ethnic cleansing in what the International Court of Justice sees as a plausible case for genocide. Tensions have been running high over the White House event. Popular Irish comedian, friends of the show, Tig Hickey, I think, took to Twitter this week to vent his anger and disappointment. He said, "I've been a Sinn Féin supporter and Irish Republican since school, One of the things that attracted me to SF was its internationalism, its solidarity with the oppressed, whether that may be South Africa, Cuba, Palestine, etc. SF says Palestine will understand the party going to the White House for St. Patrick's Day because we must put our own struggle, Irish unity first. But the simple fact is my friends from Gaza, Hebron, and Turkum don't understand. No Palestinian, besides members of the PA, can understand how their ally could shake hands with the sponsors of their ongoing genocide right now. If you love something, you appraise it honestly and want it to be better. It's never too late to do the right thing. So, yeah. Back in January, former party leader Gary Adams articulated the crux of Sinn Féin's position when he argued Irish Americans remained an important source of political support that helped to advance its cause. He claimed Palestinians would understand it needed to put its struggle first. Serious people involved in struggle understand that your struggle, whether it be internationalist, has to be your primary focus. O'Neill also rejected the argument that not attending would send a stronger message that genocide was taking place in Gaza, and it would be inappropriate to meet Biden given his deep complicity. She told Irish broadcaster RTE the party would raise the issue of Gaza and push for a ceasefire. Correct? The U.S. has always been a strong partner for peace and actually a critical player in achieving our own peace process, and I would hope that the U.S. would use that same pragmatism, the same approach they took to our peace process, and take that to the Middle East. O'Neill told Irish media in February that Hamas would eventually be a partner for peace in the Middle East and urged peace talks. However, many would see her characterization of U.S. peacemaking as naive at best, blithering ignoring that the dynamics of conflict in the Middle East are radically different to the Northern Ireland conflict. Sinn Féin successfully galvanized Irish Americans to pressure its elected representatives to help it gain entry into peace talks and the political process in the face of a hostile British establishment and intransigent British Unionist population in Northern Ireland who demanded its exclusion and a military solution to the conflict. The Good Friday Agreement was brokered with the help of the Clinton administration, and in particular Democratic Party Senator George Mitchell, who Mitchell principles established the basis for peace talks in 1996. This is after the Troubles, the IRA, all that stuff, right? You know.
Yeah.
So, by contrast, the U.S. is an apparent that a lot of members are still unhappy that they did and made concessions, right? Here to tell you. By contrast, the U.S. is an apparent partner for war in the Middle East, giving the colonial settler state of Israel diplomatic cover in the UN General Assembly and UN Security Council, as well as billions of dollars in military support over the past 5 months of Israel's onslaught in Gaza. Israel has long been a key geostrategic asset to pursuing U.S. imperial interests in the region. So, Care Bear, they did meet Sinn Féin and Biden. Do you want to see what happened? Want to see what happened when they met?
Yep.
Cool.
As you know, the Irish people are deeply troubled about the catastrophe that's unfolding before our eyes in Gaza. And when I travel the world, leaders often ask me why the Irish have such empathy for the Palestinian people. And the answer is simple. We see our history in their eyes. A story of displacement, of dispossession, and national identity questioned and denied, forced emigration, discrimination, and now hunger.
I mean, right to Biden's face. I feel like that was something.
As you know,
performative, maybe, but, you know, apparently somebody took offense to it. Because yesterday, he said to Biden, we see our history in the eyes of Palestinians, right? We just heard him. Today, he resigned. Why do you think that might have happened, Care Bear?
My guess is, and this is an educated guess, the Zionists got to him. That's my guess.
I would have to think so.
It doesn't make sense that he will just bail given what he said.
What he just said.
So
yeah, someone forced his hand on this. I've not yet been able to do more research on exactly what happened, but I'll look into it. But yeah, something's up with this for sure. That's very serendipitous to say that and then bail. So,
well, it's interesting because Obama met with Rishi Sunak.
Yes, recently.
I believe it was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And for a secret meeting. And now Sunak is saying ceasefire.
Yes.
So you can make the argument that Sunak is saying this because he's up for election now.
Well,
so
we also know,
win the favor.
And what we've talked about with ceasefire being the ask, right, is that implies that you can start firing again at some later date, right? This isn't fix the problem. This is a Band-Aid, right? And when really you should be calling for liberation of the Palestinian people, but, you know, what do I know?
Right. Or if you want to do a slightly better permanent ceasefire is what you should be calling.
Yes.
So,
but even then, like, just call for the liberation of the country and give it back to them, you know? So, Indy in the chat, maybe he was planning to do this and wouldn't have done it to Biden if he wasn't going to resign. He was already PM for 5 years. So, but, yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll look into it. I'm sure more will come out.
I don't know. I just feel generally politicians in power generally like that power and want to maintain that power as long as they can. So also plausible. I don't think personally that's likely. I think he might have been a little knock on his door, basically being like,
"Hey, you fucked up,"
you know, right?
Well,
so that's what I think, but again, we don't know for sure. So all this we're saying is alleged.
Allegedly, sure. Well, we'll see. But this article continues that U.S. officials also understood a peaceful island presented a better environment for U.S. multinationals to operate, their presence bringing more political leverage over any future Irish government. And this is where the members of the IRA I know are upset about this. Right? That, you know, it's essentially how we did Afghanistan and Iraq too, right? You know, we came in, had a bunch of business interests, took down their leaders, replaced them with leaders who were sycophantic to us and the Queen, right? You know, if Patty McGinnis is willing to go have scones and tea, something's up, you know, because things ain't fixed over there. So, you know, yeah, this is... Yeah, it's weird for sure. So, a report in June 2023 by the American Chamber of Commerce, Ireland, said 950 American companies now operated in the Republic of Ireland alone, employing 376,000 people. These facts on the ground were brought to bear on the Irish government after the Occupied Territories Bill banning trade with and economic support for illegal settlements in Israeli-occupied territories was passed by majorities in both the Seanad and the Dáil. It has been blocked by the current governing party, Fine Gael, while Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil have stated they will enact the legislation, if in power, next year. Right? So, yeah, after the bill was passed, the Irish Foreign Minister Simon Conveynie was warned the vote would mean commercial relations between the U.S. and Ireland taking a hit. More reasons this guy might have resigned. No?
Right.
Several politicians from the Irish-American stronghold of Massachusetts, including the Boston mayor Marty Walsh, said the bill was anti-Semitic. A letter signed by 10 members of Congress warned of potentially severe implications to Ireland's economy. Okay? Some of Sinn Féin's domestic critics believe the party, well-versed in political expediency and compromise of its past radical politics, may succumb to such pressure just as easily as Cavani and his colleagues. Right? You know, two cheeks of the same ass, as Galloway would put it, right? Having evolved from the political wing of the provisional IRA, the modern Sinn Féin leadership has always walked an electoral tightrope of keeping its more traditional, radical supporters on board its political program, while it strategically waters down its socialist and international politics to gain wider appeal as it edges towards entering government. What does that sound like to you, Care Bear? Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Feels familiar and terrible and just gross, but
yes,
you know. Yep. Irish Palestinian activist Farrar Kootenay, head of public relations at the London-based Palestinian Return Center, believes the party is using the Palestinian cause to garner votes, and its St. Patrick's Day visit demonstrates its lack of principle.
Yep. I would agree with that.
No. Cookies. No, go away. She is a former member of the party. A letter sent to her Belfast home in April last year announced her expulsion, which she said did not give a reason. In an opinion piece for the New Arab, she put it down to a clash she had with a party governor at a Palestine working group meeting, where she argued the party should update its policy on advocating a two-state solution, and it was void in a settler colonial reality. So she's trying to get them to go single-state solution Palestinian, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in February, she was ejected from a Sinn Féin meeting in Belfast with another Palestinian activist after interrupting proceedings to object to the St. Patrick's Day plans and denounce the presence of the Palestinian Authority representative to Ireland, Dr. Jilan Wahaba Abdul Mahid, as she was about to address the meeting. Abdul Mahid is a popular figure, particularly within Sinn Féin, who has been invited to various party events to address members and supporters. Kootenay, I'm butchering all these names, says the party's promotion of PA personalities like Abdul Mahid reflects that fact it has sold out its radical past and lacks any meaningful internationalism regarding the plight of Palestinians. She calls its support for Palestine stagnant performative activism, which includes its stated push for a ceasefire and peace process during its leader's St. Patrick's Day visit. The party has a long history with the PLO and other Arab anti-colonial movements. Libya's Colonel Muammar Gaddafi supplied the IRA with tons of modern weaponry and cash for 2 decades, right up until the late 1980s. Such militant connections may no longer exist for the party and its now defunct military wing, but such links have not fully dissipated in Ireland, as I was saying. In 2020, British media report claims of an MI5 agent outed with the real IRA, the RIRA, that the dissident group, which is still operating in Northern Ireland, has cultivated a relation with Lebanon's Hezbollah. Dissidents have also expressed solidarity with the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, flying flags atop lampposts and housing estates across Northern Ireland, where they draw support. Ireland has maintained a military neutrality policy since its inception in 1921 and has refused to join the U.S.-led NATO military alliance, even though pressure to change that policy has been building since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, quote-unquote, in February 2022. Sinn Féin has been vocal in its defense of neutrality, yet its critiques of the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine align strikingly with that of NATO countries, seeing Russia as a colonial, expansionist aggressor and a threat to European nation sovereignty. Its position arguably poses a danger of undermining its own rationale for keeping a policy which defines a big part of Irish identity. For those like Hickey and Kootenay, I guess, attending Biden's St. Patrick's Day bash also betrays Ireland's long tradition of anti-imperialist solidarity. So, fun stuff that happened, right? I received with some surprises the news that one of my cartoons, converted into a mural in Belfast, was defaced. The cartoon in question criticizes the decision of the Irish Republican Party, Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with Joe Biden, right? So there it is, right? Ireland says no to Genocide Joe, right? And here it is after, completely blacked out, right? So in the White House, in flagrant despise for this is Carlos Latouf of Latouf Cartoons, one of the ones, I think he's over at Mint Press, right?
Yes.
Biden has the blood of Palestinian women and children on his hands, and anyone fraternizing with him is now complicit in his crimes. I've already had graffiti about police brutality defaced in Brazil. My cartoons are banned in Turkey, Egypt, and Bahrain, but in Northern Ireland under the Sinn Féin government. Usually only dictatorships see cartoons as a threat. Isn't North Ireland a democracy? I hope that the cartoon will be repainted and that it doesn't suffer any more attacks like this, because I believe that the Sinn Féin government and its allies should respect freedom of speech. And here's the original, right? So in case you wanted to see that. But yeah, the party undoubtedly remains the most vocal supporter of Palestinian rights among European parties. It is currently pushing Ireland's coalition government parties to stop stalling on processing another piece of legislation it introduced before Parliament last year, the Illegal Israeli Settlements Discovered Bill 2023, which prohibits and restricts how Ireland's Strategic Investment Fund is used. However, others in Ireland are more direct and uncompromising. The party may have underestimated how unpopular its decisions to pose for the cameras with Biden and court America's power structures would be. Irish member of European Parliament, Claire Daly, may have summed up populist sentiment in Ireland best when she chastised the U.S. for sending $17.6 billion in military aid to Israel, calling Biden a sick monster, referring to Ireland's own catastrophic colonial-inspired famine in 1847. She told the EU Parliament in Strasbourg on Wednesday, and here she is doing that.
As the people of Gaza face agonizing death from orchestrated starvation, the EU is so concerned about the humanitarian situation that some of its member states cut the UNRWA funding and increase arms to Israel. The US is so troubled it's building a pier and airdropping food, but there's hundreds of trucks already at the border crossing full of supplies. It's just they're being prevented from crossing by the same Israel that the US is sending another $17.6 billion in military assistance to. What sort of sick monsters are these? There would be no famine or genocide in Gaza if Biden restrained Israel. His support has been conscious and unconditional. So as the Irish politicians shamefully cross the Atlantic to doff the cap for Patrick's Day and pay homage to this butcher, they should remember that our history and relationship with the US comes from our famine. Irish Americans should know the people of Ireland stand against genocide, Joe. Shasamid leis an Palestine, Chucky for law.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. That lady, bro,
That Ellie is a queen. We love her.
Claire, I hope you got good security, friend. I hope you got good security. I'm just saying.
I'm sure she does.
You better, because she says some shit, don't she? Biden has supported Israel's genocide in Gaza consciously and unconditionally. His heart is not in the right place, but the darkest possible place. As Irish politicians flock to bend the knee to Genocide Joe, they don't do it in our name. Irish people stand with Palestine. So, more great stuff from Claire. But, yeah. Anything to say? Anything to add?
I mean, this is just another example of our so-called allies bending the knee.
Yep.
To us, the United States, and being complicit in what's happening in Gaza. And I think Claire Daly and everyone else that you mentioned in that segment is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The fact that shout out to Global. Sorry, is that
Gaelic?
Do you speak Gaelic? Global Solidarity.
A lot of people can pick up there's usually phrases, right? So Tick Fade Allah's Our Day Will Come, right? She also, like the Aaron Gabra, that kind of stuff, right? You know, stuff that you see in Irish pubs everywhere, right? But yeah. So,
but anyway, like this is just another example of us bending the knee and actually not doing us any favors by being complicit in what's happening in Gaza right now. And I think the fact that, again, we celebrated St. Patrick's Day over the weekend while people were out getting drunk, you know, like the actual beginnings of the holiday has Patrick, according to legend, was
kicked the
slave.
pagans. Well, he also kicked the pagans out of Ireland.
He was born in right. Yeah. So so he liberated Ireland, you know.
Allegedly. I'm gonna go with allegedly. This is what the Catholic Church tells us happened, you know, like
right. But going off the legend,
yes,
the story of St. Patrick is about liberation. So the idea that these leaders were not able to kind of go in that story / legend / history, whatever you want to call it, and kind of be complicit into what's happening in Palestine, who are also looking for liberation, I think, is maddening to me. But again, shout out to the people who called this out, and apparently it resulted in the prime minister basically resigning 2 days later.
And I'm sure there might be some other reasons on top of that, but it definitely was kind of bad timing. So but I do find it funny.
I mean, given that, I'm glad
pointed out that it points out a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about as far as the problems with ceasefire and how it's being used and how it's now a political tool, you know.
No, it's co-opted. And I've said this several times. I've said this on Twitter, and I said this on otherwise. They do this all the time. Like we saw it with George Floyd. Like
they see public pressure,
kind of embrace they embrace the movement and kind of use some of the language to lessen the sting that we're kind of calling for. To nullify it into non-existence. So, but even before that, I don't think they really had to. I think the thing is, everyone was calling for a ceasefire prior, and I think that was the big mistake. It was I really would have been like
liberation would have been
calling for liberation. The best thing to say. But if you weren't going to necessarily do that, because I know the word liberation triggers some folks. A permanent ceasefire should have been the next best phrase that you should say. Because, as you said, ceasefire gives the implication that it's temporary. It doesn't necessarily mean that it could be a permanent thing.
Well,
so the idea that people are not calling for a permanent ceasefire is also, and you've noticed now, this is what a lot of the politicians, when they say it, now use, like ceasefire now, whatever. So, and I think in a lot of ways that's our fault once again, because we say it, but we don't think about the implications of what we're saying on the streets necessarily. And I don't want to make it sound like people are generally working in bad faith. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we know now that politicians will use movements to co-opt, to kind of twist in the way that they can kind of get out of things. And we need to be very careful about what our asks are, because you know that they're going to twist it and kind of give us less than what we asked for.
Dealing with a genie, right? You can ask for your wish, but he gonna fuck it up, you know? So, I mean, there's a reason why Hamas was funded by Israel to take on the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Org, right? You know, liberation is not something they want to even talk about. So, clearly, you know, which is what happens. This is what happens. And you're going to find that the more you push back on that, the more people are willing to do a lot harder shit to get that liberation, Ireland included. Like,
right.
You know, we all know what happened with them and, you know, what they were willing to do. So people got convictions. You might figure out that you can fuck around, but you might find out. So we'll see. But
right.
Yep. You can also see some of your money leave your wallet and come over to us. You know, at co-fi.com/indie news network if you want to keep things up and running, get us equipment, that kind of stuff. We appreciate all the help you can get. And if you can't give monetarily, we suggest, if it will let me click next, there we go. You can like and subscribe. You can share the stream. Very easy things to do. Comment, again, very easy. You know, help us get to 2K subs. We're getting there. We're on our way. So, and while we wait for our next story, I'm going to put Rockfin and Rumble links in the chat for people so they can go over there and support us that way as well. You never know when you need to watch us on a separate platform because YouTube hates us. But yeah, Rockfin, Rumble, both in the chat for you. On Rumble, we have St. David, St. David's, Irish PM wanted to wokeism the Irish Constitution. I don't know about that, but I'll look into it. Let's look on the Rockfins. Still just that tip from Lisa. Appreciate you. It was $5, not $3. I need glasses, Colin. I need to go get mine. So appreciate you nonetheless. All right, you ready for your next story?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go.
So, speaking of liberation, hold on, let me make sure I catch up here. There we go. We're going to talk about the education system in Palestine in this segment, or what's left of it.
Okay.
Least. So, as a teacher, I thought about this, given, you know, basically the population in Gaza is living in refugee camps right now, and I've wondered, like, how these children are getting educated, if at all.
Yeah.
And I saw a couple of people on Twitter kind of reference this article, so I think we need to take a look at this and kind of understand this
What's
is
happening.
One of the things regarding war that we don't often talk is what are the infrastructures like in terms of, you know, just meeting basic needs, and one of them being education. So this article has been written once again by Truth Out. Written by Faya, oh boy, I'm going to butcher these names, I apologize, but Faya Reina Abdul El Haj, Bida J.
Adley,
and Joy Kelsey.
Yeah.
They collectively report Israel has ruined 76% of Gaza schools in systematic attack on education. So don't think
relations to
don't
Manar
think just like
Adley,
right. So
of
when we say schools, this includes colleges, like any sort of education.
Yes, they
structure.
I have seen them gleefully dancing on the rubble of universities they bombed. So, you know,
right. But anyway, this might be a hard story to report on, but
yeah,
Gaza has become a graveyard for children. Israel's bombing has killed at least 12,300 children and more than 31,000 people total since October. Thousands more are unaccounted for and are likely to be found under the rubble of their destroyed homes and shelters. In addition to the relentless bombing, Israel has been waging a starvation campaign. While all Gazans are facing food insecurity, 1.17 million Gazans have reached emergency levels of hunger, and 500,000 are at catastrophic levels. Against this backdrop of extreme violence, Israel has also been perpetuating a very particular form of violence that has disproportionate and long-term effects on children and youth. Scholasticide, or the systematic destruction of the entire education system. Learning a new word today, folks. The destruction of Gaza's education system has garnered less attention than that of the healthcare system. But the consequences for children, youth, and future generations of Palestinians are severe. In late January 2024, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that Israel had destroyed or damaged 378 school buildings, 76% of the total school buildings in Gaza.
But Hamas, Collin.
Many of the schools are still...
But Hamas.
Many of the schools that are still standing have been transformed into displaced persons camps to accommodate some of the 1.9 million Gazians forced to flee their homes. Children who have started this new school year with dreams of becoming teachers, nurses, or doctors are now sleeping on the floor of their classrooms with hundreds of people sharing a toilet. Still, there's no safety. Schools serving as shelters are being bombed and besieged, sniped at, and blown up. Schools that haven't been totally destroyed have been emptied of their furniture and textbooks, which were burned in the absence of needed fuel.
Yep.
Gaza's higher education system has also been decimated. All 12 universities in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The almost complete closure of the Gaza Strip has also prevented 555 students from taking up scholarship-funded studies abroad. Even more devastating, Israeli forces have killed 100 Palestinian academics in Gaza since October 7th. Among them were Professor Soufan Tajeh, killed with his family on December 2nd. He was a prominent scientist and the president of the Islamic University of Gaza, the Strip's leading academic institution. On December 7th, Rifat Al-Arir, professor of world literature and creative writing at Islamic University and the editor of Gaza Writes Back, was killed along with 6 of his family members, with at least one report that he had been informed by the US-backed Israeli forces that he was a target. We reported on his story back in December. You can check for that in our playlist.
Yep.
I believe that was I forgot. What was the name of that segment? Shoot, I forgot, but you will definitely find it once. Yeah. If I die, you must tell my story. I think that was the said what it was. On February 20th, Professor Nasir Abdul Al-Noor, Dean of the Faculty of Nursing at the Islamic University in Gaza, was killed along with 6 of his family members. As with all statistics coming out of Gaza, these numbers severely underestimate the real toll. So speaking of that, shout out to Nick, who's live right now. He tweeted, "You guys realize the 30,000 number everyone keeps using is from fucking December, right?" So that number has gone up. Definitely. So saying 30,000 is very conservative. And as you can see from, if you can zoom in a little bit.
Yep. Not that way. Here you go.
Yeah. So at minimum, over 30,000 are killed.
Yeah, and this is all the numbers from December. Yeah. 58 wounded.
So that number,
104 journalists killed. Almost 2 million dispossessed. Right? Like partially destroyed homes at like 200,000. Completely destroyed homes at 67,000. Damaged schools 316. Healthcare facilities at 1,500. Yep. Damaged churches 3. Healthcare professionals 500. Healthcare facilities 164. Damaged mosques 191. Civil defense workers 164. That's like 40 killed on 124 injured. Yeah. So heritage sites 200 almost. So, yep. So detained or forcibly disappeared, I think is what it says. 3,000. So, yep. And that's just from the 7th of October to December. So,
right.
And everyone pretty much said that those numbers are like conservative, even then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, but yeah.
So, another point that Nick made, another point people should consider, not sure where he pulled this from, but Gaza intensive.
Oh, you're back.
Hmm?
Gaza health officials say they lost the ability to count dead as Israeli offensive intensifies. Sorry, you cut out for just a second.
Did you? Oh, I cut off? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So, point being, there's more than 30,000 dead.
Yeah.
And so mainstream media keeps saying 30,000, 30,000, and been saying 30,000 for the last few weeks, if not months. So, again, that's a very conservative estimate, but the number is a lot more than that. But anyway, in January, in response to the video of Israel University being blown up, a UN special rapporteur posted on X, formerly Twitter, that the deliberate destruction of Gaza's education system should constitute a distinct and new crime under international law, educationicide. In fact, Palestinians have been sounding the alarm about this for some time. Educationicide, or scholasticide, speaks to the wholesale and deliberate destruction of Gaza's education system by the Israeli state. Little wonder then that a group of Palestinian children in Gaza recently asked a United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East official why the organization bothered to teach them human rights when those values clearly don't apply to them.
Oh, God.
So, case in point, so this is actually the university that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
In the midst of being destroyed. So, short clip, a few seconds, no sound.
Cool. Playing, I think. Come on. Yeah, I mean, this is just the rubble of what used to be a university. So, and now it's more rubble. So, you know, already clearly destroyed with no one in it. You know, they felt like even that's too much for them to have. So, but, yep. You got it?
Reef, just to let you know, I think my signal is weak.
Connection's a little weak. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're okay right now. So far. But if not, I can continue for you. So, you might want to try and like leave and come back, maybe. See if that helps. Just reconnect.
Yeah, let me.
Cool.
Yeah, let me just. Maybe you.
Yep.
Can continue with at least a.
Yep. So, in the face of this destruction, the overwhelming majority of U.S. government officials have said nothing. Instead, the response of the U.S. government and many of its allies to the still unproven Israeli accusation that a small number of UNRWA's approximately 13,000 employees were involved in the October 7th attacks has been suspension of all aid to the organization, UNRWA is the largest humanitarian organization in Gaza and one of the primary educational providers. In contrast, the U.S. Congress is trying to send Israel another $14 billion in military aid, in spite of the recent ruling by the ICJ that Israel and third parties do everything they can to prevent death, destruction, and acts of genocide from happening in Gaza. So, this is pretty much them trying to claim UNRWA is Hamas again. So, since the October 7th, and then now we're here. So, Collin's back. Welcome back, Care Bear. You good?
It's still weak, but I think it'll be fine for now at least.
Okay.
Cool. But anyway, thanks for covering.
No, you're good.
Anyway, before October 7th, the K-12 education system in Gaza included 625,000 students who attended public, private, and UN-run schools and 22,564 teachers. Palestinians are among the most educated populations in the Middle East. In spite of the 17-year siege, frequent Israeli bombings, and disruptions to education, Gaza students often rank among the top performing students in the Palestinian territories. In fact, in the face of this destruction, the overwhelming majority of U.S. government officials have said nothing. Instead, the response of the U.S. government and many of its allies to the still unproven Israeli accusation that a small number of Yarmanas, approximately...
This is the one I read.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, God, I got to zoom these.
Can you zoom in for that? Yeah. Statistics tell only part of the story. The significance to education to Palestinians is rooted to their anti-colonial struggle. It was Palestinians who first set up the first refugee schools in 1948. By the mid-1960s, almost all Palestinian refugees completed the compulsory cycle of schooling at access rates that were far in advance of the public systems in some of their host states. As the Palestinian national movement gained traction in the 60s and 70s, education merged as integral to the Palestinian nonviolent resistance. In the 1970s, for example, the Palestine Liberation Organization developed a dedicated philosophy of education, mobilized Reef to provide literacy classes to first-generation refugees, and supported the publication of children's books designed to provide young Palestinians with a sense of their history. Scroll down.
Yep.
And identity. Later, during the first Intifada, popular community-based education initiatives were created to overcome Israel's prolonged closure of schools. When the Palestinian Authority was established in 1994, one of its first acts was to assume control of the education system and develop a dedicated Palestinian curriculum. In recent years, Gaza's educators have been at the forefront of educational innovations in the region. Nawada's online learning platform was, for example, developed by teachers in Gaza who sought to continue schooling through the periods of disruptive violence. Subsequently developed into a region-wide platform, these efforts supported continuity of learning for Palestinian refugees in other countries. This is the problem.
Yes. Yep.
Like, in the midst of their suffering, they've still been able to educate their children in terms of the resistance. So Israelis cannot have that if they want to, ethnically cleanse the region.
Yes.
And we're going to get more into that, I think it was a TikTok that I've played before, but I think in a recent episode, but I'm going to play it again. But this is actually deemed as a threat to Israel because these are essentially the reasons why, these are essentially how world changers would actually kind of rise up against Palestine, against Israel. So this is deemed as problematic for Israel. So this is why they're attacking schools. But anyway, Palestinians are not unique in the value they subscribe to education. Refugees, migrants, and radically marginalized communities everywhere often refer to the importance of education for a better future. However, the extreme oppression that Palestinians live under, especially those in Gaza, 70% of whom are refugees, lends education a particular importance and urgency. Education and knowledge are portable assets that can transcend dispossession, diaspora, and statelessness. Education is also a key social and cultural institution, one that simultaneously assumes a continuity with the past and an orientation towards a better future. For a population whose history, national identity, and rights have been consistently denied, education has a formidable potential. This is precisely why the denial of Palestinian right to education has been a persistent feature of Israel's settler colonial project over the last 8 decades.
Mm-hmm.
There
it goes.
Wait, let me just check.
Yeah, you're right.
There we go. Yeah. I clicked it a couple of times. Alongside killing, arrests, ethnic cleansing, forced displacement, land appropriation, domicide, and the targeting of health and media sectors, Israel's history of targeting Palestinian education is designed to erase Palestinian presence in the land of historic Palestine. For decades, schools have been bombed, bulldozed, and forcibly closed. The Israeli military has arrested and beaten students and shot them in the classrooms. The Kafka-esque restrictions on Palestinian right to movement, including checkpoints, earth mounds, the wall, and restricted residency laws, also make it difficult, if not impossible, for students to attend schools and universities. Palestinian citizens of Israel face large funding inequities, and unrecognized Palestinian communities are denied the right to have their own schools.
Mm-hmm.
These attacks on education extend to accusations leveled against the Palestinian curriculum. Across the West Bank and Gaza, including in UN-administered schools, students learn the curriculum developed by the PA. This curriculum was first developed in the late 1990s by the renowned Palestinian educator and academic Ibrahim Abdul Lugad. Like any other curriculum, it offers a shared narrative and projects a collective vision for society. Yet, unlike almost any other contemporary curriculum, it is taught in the context of military occupation and settler colonial dispossession. Consequently, it must contend with the oppressive political context that has shaped the lives of generations of Palestinians. Since the late 1990s, several high partisan organizations have accused the PA curriculum for promoting hatred and anti-Semitism. The fact that these accusations have come from extremely polemical organizations whose methods and findings have been called into question time and again have had no impact on US and EU officials who continue to promote these damaging falsehoods. Nor is there any discussion of the ways in which the Israeli curriculum is promoting anti-Palestinian violence and hatred. So you've probably seen online on Twitter, like a lot in schools, a lot of the propaganda that a lot of Israeli kids are learning about Palestinians and basically saying, you know, that they haven't met Arabs, and if they do, that they're going to kill them or do something harmful to them. I'm sure, which I know that many of you guys have seen online. But anyway, the result has been sustained an obsessive focus on the content of the PA curriculum by major Western donors and significant pressure on the PA and the Ramada to deconceptualize education. The famous philosopher John Dewey argued that the proper role of education is to foster cooperation on real-world issues of direct importance. Brazilian educator Pablo Freire took this idea further, articulating a pedagogical vision that directly engaged with the source of his students' oppression. Palestinian educators understand this all too well. As many Palestinian teachers we know have told us, knowledge is our only weapon. Perhaps it is this fundamental truth that best explains Israel's determination to destroy the education system in Gaza in an attempt to retain its oppressive status quo. The destruction of the entire education system of education in Gaza cannot be counted only in terms of the lives lost and infrastructure destroyed. more than 200 out of 325 cultural sites have been destroyed or severely damaged, including museums, libraries, archaeological sites, and publishing houses. When this latest round of violence ends in Gaza, there will likely be another infusion of international humanitarian projects that seek to rebuild schools, teach a new generation of educators, and launch trauma-informed programs to address the psychosocial needs of Palestinian children and youth who have grown up entirely under siege of war. However, these programs will only address a fraction of what is needed to challenge the colonial oppression, dispossession, and violence that have inflicted generations of Palestinians. Palestinian children, youth, and educators in Gaza, the West Bank, and the diaspora need and deserve to learn in safety. But for Palestinians, safety goes hand in hand with contesting the oppression that frames their daily lives and preserving their cultural identity. This can only be achieved through dangerous knowledge that challenges the realities of dispossession, colonialization, and statelessness, and teaches each new generation the historical and cultural wisdom necessary to secure a free and just future. Any thoughts before I continue with my last slide?
No, we'll let you get to your last slide and then I'll say stuff.
All right, so let's play it. Oh no, I'm actually not done.
Oh,
sorry. I thought I was finished. Sound like a good ending. Protecting the expression of this dangerous knowledge in the U.S. is also critical at this historic moment in which academic freedom is also under attack, especially on college and university campuses. Student activism was key to enlightening and changing U.S. public opinion about the horrors of the Vietnam War and apartheid South Africa. And we've talked about what happened, how Reagan kind of put a hammer onto this. And basically became where generally universities and colleges in this country became more conservative, or forced to become more conservative in terms of their teaching as a result of the protests that were occurring on colleges back then in regards to the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement. Given the outsized role that the US government plays in supporting Israel's current war in Gaza and its apartheid policies, it is imperative that we in the US fiercely protect academic freedom and spaces for dangerous political critique and analysis that are central to education for justice. I mean, that sounds great in theory, but we don't do that here, and we're definitely not doing that now.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, especially just given my community, you know, how they're changing curriculum to whitewash slavery, for example. You know, we talked about on this show just how in your state, African American studies is no longer essentially an elective that you can even take in schools. So, yeah, I mean, the US is not going to do anything in this, unfortunately, because we have our own propaganda that we want to teach our students here.
Yep.
So to hell with teaching about liberation, especially for students of color in this country, much less for Palestine. But anyway, let's get to this last slide. I've shown you this guy before back in December, but he talks about something in regards to children. But I think what he says also it kind of ties in with the education system. So we can play that real quick.
Y'all, we need to talk about why the IOF is systemically killing babies in Gaza. Now, it's very important to recognize that this is not some barbaric, not thought out strategy. This is extremely deliberate, the targeting of children. Why would the IOF be so insistent on attacking hospitals, destroying hospitals, killing literal children, making sure that incubators are turned off so 30-some children who are barely even alive get executed? There's a reason behind this. And the reason is because the Israeli state knows that if these children live, they will be the biggest freedom fighters in the history of the world. And one of these children will be able to liberate Palestine. After one of these children has witnessed genocide, has literally been born into a world where everyone around them, every person that they loved, has been murdered by the state that they are subject to. These children are growing up in concentration camps. The propaganda likes to talk about terrorism and shit and how Palestinians brainwash their kids in order to hate Israel. Israel knows that it is creating the most hardcore generation of freedom fighters in Gaza right now who are going to dismantle the Israeli state by any means necessary. Even if Israel destroys Hamas, they know that these kids who are being socialized in genocide are never going to forget, and they're never going to forgive what this settler colony did to their family. And they will be the most hardcore freedom fighters and the most hardcore resistance that has ever been created in the history of the world. And the Israeli settler colonial state knows that. So they're trying to eliminate every single one of them so they don't have to deal with the consequences of one Palestinian freedom fighter in Gaza who right now is 3 years old. And in 15 years from now, they will remember how they grew up in a concentration camp and how their family, their bloodline was executed. And they are the lone survivor, that they represent their lineage, and they will avenge the blood of their martyred ancestors. There is no better way to create a freedom fighter than to systemically eradicate someone's family. And the Israeli settler colony knows that if any of these kids survive, one freedom fighter from Gaza who was socialized and born in a concentration camp, whose family was murdered, whose ancestors were displaced, they know that these kids literally pose the single greatest threat to the Israeli settler colony, and that one Palestinian survivor from Gaza will be able to liberate Palestine. That's why they're killing so many kids. That's why.
And why they're wanting to get rid of TikTok too. But
yes.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me with this, the quote that people should remember from this was the kids asking, why teach us human rights if it doesn't apply to us? I think that's disgusting that children are asking their teachers that for one thing, that they have to.
Right.
You know. So, and that they're not wrong. You know.
No, they're not wrong, but I would argue we don't teach liberation here. And for me, being in as a teacher, right, for the same reasons. Like, to be damned to have children be aware of how fucked up our government is and have them rise up too. Like, it's the same shit based on the colonial systems that we have both here and in Palestine, ironically enough. It's in terms of our education system. So, you know, that's why people like Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, even MLK, a lot of our history, just given within the African American community, are whitewashed or not talked about to death. Because God forbid that children learn about MLK, you know, about his economic policies, and talk, especially given like a guaranteed income or what we call now UBI. To hell with people knowing that. To hell with Malcolm X. Well, I think he's already somewhat erased from our history, but like, he also said the same thing. We have to liberate our people by any means necessary. And he was huge on education, but not necessarily in a way in the structure that we kind of make our education, you know? Black Panthers, same thing.
Yeah.
People know them generally as a militant group, which they weren't. So even here, we have that issue too. But the difference in Palestine is that they will outright kill these kids.
Yeah.
Because they know, and I think given what they said, they are intelligent as hell. So you pair that with actual like resistance knowledge, that's a dangerous combination.
Yep.
And Israelis can have that if they want to continue this project of their colonial project to ethnically cleanse the region. So this is why it's very significant, and I think, as you said, disgusting that they're willing to basically destroy the very systems by which children have the means to be educated and learn, and especially given their history, to essentially, I say that because in a way I feel like they're going to be radicalized more, if anything else. I think it's just going to have more of the ironic effect that I think Israeli, but I think not even that, the youth here are seeing what's happening and are becoming more radicalized as a result of what's happening in Gaza. So yeah, I think we may not have books, we may not have schools, but we have social media. And as you said, that's why they want to ban TikTok for that very reason too. You know, because again, God forbid that people get radicalized here, that they actually want to do something more beyond what we're doing right now.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. It sucks. And it's why they do everything in their power to stop it. And they tend to fuck with people's money first because that affects us the most in a capitalistic society. But, you know, that's why we're demonetized on YouTube. So to super chat us, you have to go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan the QR code on your screen now. Or if you're in the live chat, you can press !donate and you'll get a nice fancy link to that. Look at that. We got the technologies working for us. And if you can't give monetarily, just like and subscribe, hit the share button. Very easy stuff for you to do and helps out a lot. We're heavily suppressed and any little bit helps. Help us get to 2K. We're getting there. What are we at now, Collin? Still 1.8 something?
1.86.
Okay. Numbers going up. I'll take it. So, but yeah, you ready for our last one? I checked Rockford and Rumble already. So let's go to our last one. We get to blame it on a BB. Are you ready? Are you ready to blame it on the bookie? I mean BB, Collin?
Sure.
So I brought Miss Caitlin Johnstone, one of our favorites here, who seems to be able to say the things we think in a way that actually makes sense and not just the jumble of words and emotions in our head. So she writes, blaming it all on BIBI. Coming under fierce attack for supporting genocide, the U.S. establishment has decided to blame it all on Netanyahu to insulate itself from further condemnation. Right? So they're really going to try to pin all the blame for the incineration of Gaza on Benjamin Netanyahu so that nothing has to change when this is over. The Western Empire has chosen a single scapegoat to carry away its sins so the status quo can march on unhindered by guilt or conscience. They want everyone to pin all the blame for Gaza genocide on Netanyahu, but this is not all the fault of Netanyahu. It's the fault of the entire Israeli state. It's the fault of Joe Biden. It's the fault of the Democrats. It's the fault of the Israeli supporters on Capitol Hill. It's the fault of the Western press. It's the fault of the Israel lobby. It's the fault of the unelected empire managers in U.S. government agencies. Is the fault of the entire U.S. empire and all its imperial member states like Australia, the UK, the EU, and Canada. But as you mentioned earlier, Collin, in your previous segment, education also is partly to blame, correct?
Correct.
So I wanted to bring the other side of the education coin. You saw how Israelis are more than willing to take away Palestinians' education, but what about their own people? What do you think's happening there, Collin?
You've probably asked yourself, how does someone react to genocide like this?
With your babies here.
The answer is they've been conditioned to, and it starts in their education system. Here are 3 examples of how Israel teaches the dehumanization of Palestinians. According to this Israeli professor's research, Israeli textbooks show Palestinians, or Arabs as they're called, as caricatures of primitive farmers, hordes of refugees, or they're masked and painted as terrorists.
You cannot find one photograph of a human being who is a Palestinian.
And it might explain how you end up with videos like this.
We need to kill Arabs.
The way they are represented are as the problems and threats. And since they never or hardly ever meet Palestinians face to face or speak to them, although they may live 50 to 100 meters from them, this is what they know.
If you type map of Israel in Hebrew into Google, this is what you'll get. Notice how a lot of these maps have no clear markings showing the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, all of which are internationally recognized as illegally occupied Palestinian territories. You'll also find this map in Israeli textbooks. It's how you end up with illegal settlers colonizing more and more Palestinian land, claiming it's their God-given right.
All this, what you say, it's belong to Israel.
And it's how you end up with scenes like this.
You have this necklace?
That's Palestine, yeah.
This is Israel. Students in Israel are taught about the Holocaust starting in nursery school all the way to the 12th grade. Part of that learning is looking at horrifying images, or exercises that encourage students to put themselves in the shoes of the victims and relate to the experience. The identification of students with the victims isn't a coincidence. It's an intentional policy by the Israeli Ministry of Education. It's how you end up with a society where, according to one Israeli professor, every Jewish Israeli citizen is a Holocaust survivor or a potential victim of future Holocaust-like events.
The goal is traumatization and revenge, and not to let the fire of vengeance die out. However, this vengeance is not directed towards the German persecutors and their collaborators in Europe, but towards Palestinian colonized subjects who are Nazified.
Mm-hmm. That's the bit that kills me.
I know.
It's the Germans, well, Europe,
yes,
were the ones that prosecuted you and victimized you, but then like you're taking it out on the Palestinians.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And like the cognitive dissonance on that, especially with the Zionists that I see online, it's just like it's almost like it doesn't compute with them that you should be your issue is Europe, really, not the Palestinians who you're essentially kind of taking their land from. But anyway, go on, you can continue.
Yes, I found this and it was like, oh, okay.
This vengeance is not directed towards the German persecutors and their collaborators in Europe, but towards Palestinian colonized subjects who are Nazified.
The fact that Palestinians had nothing to do with the Holocaust and that they are the ones currently being exterminated seems to be irrelevant. With this weaponization of the Holocaust, Zionism isn't seen for the settler colonial racist ideology that it is, but as the savior of the Jewish people. And it's this thinking and this fear that is weaponized to justify the violence of the Zionist state. That it must exist and do whatever is necessary to defend itself so that another Holocaust would never happen again. That's how you end up with videos like this.
It is a terrorist organization which murders Jews because they're Jews. Once the Jewish people were defenseless, no longer.
So why does this matter?
Israelis spend 12 years in this education system, teaching them to dehumanize Palestinians and see them as people looking to eliminate Jews, not an oppressed, colonized people looking for freedom. And once they graduate, most Jewish Israelis will go straight to the military to do their 2 to 3 years of mandatory service, where they become the front lines of apartheid and occupation. That's how we end up with videos like this. So why do all this? Well, Israel can only exist as a Jewish state if it manages demographics to maintain a Jewish majority. And it does so by displacing, imprisoning, and murdering Palestinians routinely. And the only way to get Jews to participate in this is by convincing them that it's the only way for them to exist safely. Seeing Palestinians as people who want to live in peace and be free doesn't fit into that plan. Subscribe for more and support us on Patreon.
So, any questions?
Who is this from?
Uncivilized.
Okay.
Yep. So you can find them. They're around, but yeah,
Not
anything...
questions, but yeah, I have something I want to say.
Please.
Actually, I'm gonna wait because I lost the train of thought. But let's. I'll get back to it, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, Caitlin continues by trying to make this mass atrocity solely the fault of Netanyahu and not the giant sprawling network of immensely powerful institutions which made it possible. They're working to ensure that no changes will need to be made to any of those institutions. It's just like how they made a scapegoat of Judith Miller for the entire mass media's war propaganda in the lead up to the Iraq invasion and let all the blame for the war hang on Bush before completely rehabilitating Bush's image during the Trump administration and deciding he's a pretty great guy after all. No meaningful changes were ever made to ensure that U.S. power alliance never repeats its horrible crimes after Iraq, which is why it keeps repeating horrible crimes. The trouble with Israeli apologia on Gaza is that at first glance its talking points sound legit if you don't know much about Israel-Palestine, like Israel has the right to defend itself, or they need to get rid of Hamas because of October 7th, etc. It would sound entirely reasonable if you didn't know that Israel is a settler colonialist apartheid state who has been murdering, abusing, and stealing from indigenous population of the land for generations. The amount of energy needed to see through the talking points is far greater than the amount of energy needed to speak them. It's one of those, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth even gets its pants on kind of deals. Which is why it's miraculous that so many people around the world are getting educated enough to see through the lies and support the Palestinians. How are they getting educated enough? Mostly through online content, which sums up the situation quickly and concisely enough for them to understand easily. That's the only way the truth can move quickly enough to catch up with the lies, and that's the role TikTok has played here, which is why we've seen Israel lobbyists and the ADL shrieking their lungs out about it for months. Saying TikTok must be suppressing pro-Israel content because pro-Palestinian content is more popular is like saying they're suppressing flat earth content because round earth content is more popular. Pro-Israel content is just less popular in general, which is why the gap is the same on Facebook and Instagram. The US government is like, no, it's not censorship. We're just using state power to ensure that popular speech platforms are only allowed to exist if they can be controlled by US government agencies. Forgotten in all this is the news that Israel literally tortured UN staff to extract false statements about UNRWA having Hamas connections. They tortured UN staff. If we had anything remotely like objective news reporting in the Western press, this would have been the top story everywhere for days.
I mean, honestly, if we were on our P's and Q's in independent media. That should also news too.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I figured I remembered what I wanted to say.
Okay.
It's it's amazing that after all of this is said and done, like, I think for me, just basically as a Black man, you know, and knowing my history, I'm able to kind of sympathize with other oppressed people easily. Like, in terms of, you know, even just as recently as my grandparents, what they had to, like, my parents were not that far out from slavery themselves. They were about maybe, I think at best, about 40 years out from abolition of slavery in the Caribbean. But even then, you can argue they were still more pretty much enslaved. The plantation still existed even to the point when my dad was alive.
Angola,
but
Angola. No, I'm just saying it's yes, but plantations still exist. They're just renamed prisons now.
But it's like, with everything that's going on, and I think you said this before on another stream, it's almost giving Israel another justification to feel safe, given how, you know, they're not winning the PR war right now. Like, and basically it's gotten to the point where people hate Israel because they're being identified, they're being exposed for what they are. And so I kind of am fear of that, because it's going to give more. I think you're seeing the doubling down now in terms of, oh, people hate Israel because of, you know, XYZ. So it's more of a reason for us to have our need for safety, which in turn is going to affect Palestinians more. And I've been wondering, it's like, what kind of conversations can you have with Israelis and Zionists in general who can kind of break that propaganda that has been force fed to them? In terms of how to see that this is not a fight that you should be looking to, given your religion, assuming that you are Jewish.
Well, see, that's
given
the
the history that we've kind of reported on here, that a lot of this is based on European colonialism and imperialism that has warped your religion in order to think and respond in the way that you do. And so I just feel like right now it's just becoming more ramped up in terms of having Israelis feel that they're feeling less safe now. And we've seen this online, like they say, complain. They're seeing all the protests. They're seeing like people being very negative about Israel. And they're kind of like, oh, I still don't feel safe. So it gives more of a justification of what's happening to Palestinians now. So I think for me, that's kind of the frustrating part, is because like we're not moving away from it. If anything, we're accelerating the issue in terms of what's happening in Palestine right now, is giving them more of a justification to do what they're doing. Because of the world's stance against Israel right now.
Well, you reminded me about the religious side of this, where I've, you know, full disclosure, I've been an atheist for a long time, right? Partly due to, you know, speakers who talked about those subjects, Richard Dawkins, Stephen Fry, you know, Carl Sagan and the like, right? Where are they at? Stephen Fry right now, big supporter of Israel. Like, why does he not speak about religions as a whole? It's only one that's an issue. Like, you know, that's this kind of stuff that frustrates me now, where I feel like a lot of the movements that would have pushed back on this have been co-opted, controlled, manipulated, and are now comfortable and safe. You know, like they have their ivory towers to live in now, and they don't need to see the same problems elsewhere. So yeah, this is, but I definitely wanted to bring, I don't think anyone's talked about the other side of the education system on this. So I felt like it was important for that to, like, did you know about the, they're teaching kids about that stuff in like literally your kids' age, the ones you teach.
I didn't know that they were teaching them so young, but I'm not surprised by it either. I mean, look at here. Like, I was sharing this with Indy, I think, last weekend. Night is required reading generally about Elie Wiesel, like in most high schools in this country. I've read Night several times in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's the thing too.
Like I say this, like in school, like I learned the whole, and again, it's valid given the oppression, but I learned the Holocaust up the ass. Like I knew nothing regarding, my experience in Africa other than like slaves, and the only things that I learned outside of that was because of my dad.
Yeah.
And then like any research that I had to do on my own.
For me, I grew up in the Southern school system where they still teach about the Holocaust. That was a whole, I swear, 2 weeks long, lesson every year, right? Versus no talks of Emmett Till or, it was like you might have gotten Black History Month. You might have gotten a segment or two, but none of the actual revolutionaries that actually did. No Malcolm X, no, Nat Turner, no, you know what I mean? Like none of those were coming up. So, and a lot of what we did wasn't talked about either. So that was kind of, like we read some story where someone sang a spiritual and, that was about it. And we moved on. So like there's definitely issues with education in this country too on that, which is why you see a lot of the problems you see now with Americans not being able to see through propaganda, which is why they want to control any of the education systems outside of that, like TikTok, like whatever, and they're running it under the guise of responsible stewardess of social media. Like you need to be able to control these places of fake news and conspiracy. Otherwise, you're going to miseducate people. And it's like, well, you're not educating them fucking well either. So, I'd rather them take the gamble elsewhere. So let them figure it out. But yeah, and I definitely think they're trying to blame it all on one group again and letting that.
Well, let's get to BIBI for a second because it's easy to target one person. We do it with Trump. Like constantly. Or any Republican official constantly. Hell, they do it to Democrats too. But we don't talk about the root issue. The root issue is Zionism. You get rid of BIBI, you're just going to get another person like him, if not worse, who's just going to continue the project.
This was happening.
It's been happening
under different administrations in Israel.
It's just like people think that this all started because of BIBI. Granted, he's been in power pretty much for as long as we've been alive.
We just had him out. He just got reelected, really. We had a different guy in there for a while. So
but again, like he's only been in power since the 80s.
Yeah.
So this has been happening up, and I'm going to make this argument. This whole thing has been happening since the turn of the century. This thing has been in motion.
Yep. Well, with the Balfour and what's the other?
Even before that,
what's the other conference about Africa?
Berlin.
That's it. Yeah. So.
So this has been in motion for over 100 years.
Yep. This is League of Nations. This is all that crap.
Right. So this is not a recent thing. And even BIBI, this is not a him thing. This is an ideological idea that has been crafted among people with money and power that were educated enough to know how to accomplish their goal, and they were willing to wait long term, kind of like a lot of our right wingers here
Yeah.
were willing to wait long term until they got what they wanted, and
Well,
are looking to wait long term
it also
to be
makes
able
it
to get what they
very easy for particular political members here to go, once they deal with either get a ceasefire or get Netanyahu out, like you saw Chuck Schumer trying to say things like that they need to run elections, right? It allows for, if those things then do happen, they count it as a win and run with it as a talking point. You know, and you'll see Biden going, see, I saved the democracy, and, you know, it'll be rhetorical bullshit because we all know the problem didn't fix itself. It just went away. So,
right. I think the difference is BIBI is just basically like kick rocks.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I'm going to do anyway. And
until you
will
kick
give
me the fuck out.
Right.
Much.
And even then, that's not justified, because how can we kick him out and still give money to Israel?
Yeah.
So he already has our money. So, and that's the problem. Like the aid is unconditional. It's not based on any tangibles at all. It's just, it's Israel, it's an ally, so we're just going to naturally give them money. So the idea of BIBI being the scapegoat, I think, is very convenient for them, but I don't think it's going to work in terms of...
Who's to say if we want to world police that side of the thing too, and then occupy Israel ourselves? Like, we're building a fucking nice little pier over there so we can drop boots off if we want to. You know? Like, if they want to continue, they just switch occupiers. It's the same business developers who are going to make the money. Why do they care who, is the figurehead? So lots of things can happen between now and elections and after elections, and what, who knows what Trump's willing to do too. He's friend of AIPAC as well. So we'll see, but yeah. It's one of the reasons why we're demonetized, which, you can always choose to help us in other ways at ko-fi.com/indie news network. We're making this little goal right there for equipment for people go up. So yeah, and if you can't support us monetarily, you can also support us by liking and subscribing, sharing to help beat the suppression, and commenting to let us know what you think. But yeah, another show done, Care Bear.
Yeah.
So, anything you want to say before we get out of here? Tell people to buy some merch, with their hard-earned cash. So, you can get some of these lovely bits of fashion, So, but yeah.
Yeah. Any remind us to
help JB. We did that.
JB. We did mention that at the beginning. Maybe we should pull up his thing at now.
I'd have to find it again.
If anyone is willing to donate to him, he basically needs a new house. So whatever you're able to give in terms of helping him and his family, once we've pulled that up, if you want to support a brother in the space to help him financially in that, we would appreciate it.
I put the link to his PayPal in chat, or you can go to @jbuffont on PayPal. See if you can give him a few donos there. Would be appreciated. But yeah, what's coming up this week? You're going tomorrow. Where you supposed to be?
I'm going to be on Savvy and JB show tomorrow at 6 Eastern time. We're going to be talking about community building from the after effects of the Brianna Boyd Jenk Euler interview that she did on Faith that premiered last week. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be with them tomorrow. Angel will be on Friday night at 7. Is Tara going to be live?
She has a thing with I forget his last name. Victor. He was the guy traded for Brittany Griner. She's gonna be doing a thing with him. So we'll see about that. But yeah, Indy is giving me this, which we can bring up. Very useful since it's actually done. There you go. How about that?
Perfect.
Yep.
So now you can see what's up for the next few days. So that's up until tomorrow.
Yep.
And then Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, Pro Wrestling Talk with Angel.
Yep.
At 8. Snow Himbo Gaming at 11:30 Eastern time. All these are Eastern time. Sunday, How Do We Miss That? With you and Indy.
And
then at midnight,
Boats after that.
Nothing on Monday, and then
Tuesday, I think there is
Tuesday
a American tradition. So
tradition, and then next week will be
Wednesday all over again.
On Wednesday. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
not sure. Indy says not sure about Chris Legion on Friday. So
cool.
That's the only possible change.
Yep. Great. You know, always keep in touch with us. You can do that at Twitter. Get Indie News on Twitter. Very easy. You can find all our links if you want to follow us, say on Rockfin and Rumble at indienews.network. You should see the link in the description below. You can find all the links to all the members if you want to support them there as well. Anything else? I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can get out of here. But anyway, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.